This is Chapter 12, Lesson 4, Shape of the Data Distributions. The distribution of a set of data shows the arrangement of data values. That is your first vocabulary word. Make sure you have it on page 891. Here are some more vocabulary words found on page 892. Data has an evenly distributed between the left side and right side, have a symmetric distribution. The distribution shown has a cluster of several data values within the interval 10 to 12. The gaps are 9 and 13 have no data values, and the value 10 is a peak because it is the most frequent occurring value. Make sure you put this example in there and are able to describe what that data is telling you in your vocabulary section of your notebook. This example can be found on page 892, letter A. It wants us to use clusters, gaps, peaks, and outliers, and symmetry to describe the shape of the graph at the right. Make sure you look at your vocabulary words to know what each of these words is actually asking. So clusters, first of all. If I look at my data chart, I notice that I have a cluster right here where the most amount of numbers are occurring. So my cluster would be from 0.01 seconds all the way to 7.30 seconds using my data given. Any peaks? Peaks are the ones that have the most numbers occurring. So if I look at my data, where all my numbers are most occurring, and my peak is from 0.01 to 230. So make sure you know the difference between a cluster and a peak. Looking at my graph, symmetric means that it goes up as the same rate as it comes down. If I'm looking at my graph right here, I notice that it just is constantly going down. So this graph is not symmetric. I also need to look for gaps and outliers. If I look, all my data continuously flows, so there are no gaps. And outliers would mean that there's a number way off the chart not even existent. So I also can say that there are no outliers. So make sure you use those words when you're describing these graphs. This example can be found on page 893, letter B. Looking at it, I need to describe the center and the spread of the distribution. Now look to see what it's asking. It's not asking for outliers or gaps or any of that. It's looking to describe the center and the spread. So looking at this data and running some of the figures, I notice that this is a symmetric graph because it goes up at the same rate that it comes down. So it looks good on both sides. Then if I look at it, describing the center means that if I look for the mean, my mean is directly in the center. So my mean would be 29 years. Also, if I continue to look at this graph, like I said, I can show that there are no outliers. So the mean would be good to use. And that is exactly what they're looking for when they're talking about the spread and the distribution, that it is symmetric. And describing the center means that mean would be the best.